What you're about to see is real.
I asked him if he was going to jump off the building.
And what was his reply?
He said, yes, I'm going.
How would you describe the event? Was it?
I don't see.
Was it a controlled event? Let me ask you a question.
Absolutely, it was a controlled event. In my opinion, I don't see how it could have been handled more professional.
I turned to them and I said, gentlemen, you have a nice day. And I turned around and jumped off.
Hello, I'm Nick Clooney, and this is On Trial. In today's case, a man faces the consequences of parachuting from the top of a downtown high-rise into the middle of a city plaza. The 1999 Broadway building in Denver, Colorado is 43 stories high, one of the city's tallest. In the fall of 1987, 33-year-old Robin HEID climbed to the roof and jumped 530 feet to the plaza below. This kind of parachuting is called base jumping. Robin HEID, a sport parachutist, author, and former candidate for a Republican congressional nomination, had conceived the jump as a promotional event for his book, Sport Death, which he published himself. The parachute jump was later incorporated into his political campaign through this poster, which features a photograph of the jump. Robin HEID was arrested a few hours after the jump and charged with trespass and reckless endangerment. At his first trial, the trespassing charge was dismissed, but the jury deadlocked on the question of reckless endangerment. Robin HEID enters this courtroom today for a retrial on the charges that his action unreasonably endangered the safety of persons on the ground. If found guilty, he could be sentenced to a maximum penalty of 6 months in prison and a $750 fine as he goes on trial. Defendant Robin HEID has chosen to defend himself against charges that his unusual parachute jump posed any real danger. The prosecution contends that the jump was a reckless act which could have directly resulted in the death or injury of pedestrians. Robin HEID claims that his jump was perfectly planned and executed, and that it would have been canceled if there were any danger. Key elements and testimony from the actual trial have been edited together to present this case.
Remember, what you are watching is real. Today's trial takes place in the City and County Court building in Denver, Colorado. The case will be heard by a 6-person jury, standard in Colorado for non-felony cases. Judge Brian Campbell of the 2nd Judicial District is presiding. The prosecutor is Deputy District Attorney Henry Cooper. He also prosecuted the defendant at his first trial.
Crowded streets, downtown Denver, he jumped off the top of this roof. A 43-story building. You will hear testimony that there were people on the ground. You will hear testimony there were people in cars on the ground, and there was nobody on the ground to ensure their safety. All those people on the ground, all those people in those cars, all of them were in danger. And that at the height at which the defendant jumped, it was extremely risky. At the close of this evidence, ladies and gentlemen, I will ask you to find the defendant guilty of reckless endangerment.
Remember, defendant Robin HEID is acting as his own attorney in this trial. Although he has no legal background, he considers himself to be an expert in the field of sport parachuting and has more than 1,000 jumps to his credit, including more than 50 from stationary objects such as bridges and mountains. Defendant Robin HEID's opening statement.
I parachuted from the roof of a 530-foot building and landed safely and precisely on the ground below. The evidence will show that this entire event, to include the 20 seconds during which the jump took place, was conducted within the limits of common sense, good citizenship, American business, and Colorado law.
Prosecution witness Richard Martinez was formerly employed at 1999 Broadway. He had been assigned to help set up tables and chairs for Robin HEID's book signing party on September 18th and accompanied the defendant to the roof of the building that day.
Before going up there, did you have any knowledge at all of the defendant going to jump off the roof?
No.
I guess what I'm getting at, Mr. Martinez, were you aware of the defendant making any precautions, special precautions with the building personnel in terms of protection of the public or anything like that, protection of people?
I didn't really notice. I met him inside the building in the lobby area. We went right up the elevators up to the roof.
Okay, when you got to the roof, what happened?
Well, they started taking pictures. They started pulling equipment out and taking pictures and stuff like that. Robin started to put his gear on, his parachute, and he was getting ready to jump off the building.
Okay, what did you do at that point?
I asked him if he was going to jump off the building.
And what was his reply?
He said, yes, I'm going to. And he handed me a piece of paper saying that he had permission with the company I used to work for, his letterhead on there and everything. And
Now, you say you watched the defendant jump?
well, I watched him put his gear on, and I read the paper, said he could jump. I took some pictures with him. I thought it was a legitimate jump, and he jumped. I watched him jump.
Did you watch him, did you look down as he
Yes, I
went
did.
down? Okay, were there cars down there?
It wasn't like real busy rush hour traffic. It was quiet, I thought.
There were cars on the street underneath?
I really didn't notice.
Okay.
It was pretty quiet, I thought.
And were there people down there?
I didn't even notice. I was watching him jump off the building.
Okay. No further questions, Judge.
All right, Mr. Hyde, you may inquire.
The defendant, acting as his own attorney, cross-examines.
Did it seem to you that we knew what we were doing when we got out there on the roof with you?
No, I really haven't seen, I haven't been around people jumping off of buildings or anything like that, but you seemed to have it together when you were getting your equipment on and when you made the jump. When the parachute opened and everything seemed like you knew what you were doing.
We were organized and professional in the manner in which we threw wind streamers and put on the gear and communicated by radio with the ground, set up the camera.
Well, I didn't see the wind streamers, but everything else, yeah, I can say it was done real good.
After the jump, you came downstairs and met me at the book signing table, correct?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And there was a line of people buying books.
Yes, there was all kinds of people down there.
And all of them were quite happy.
Mm-hmm.
None of them felt threatened or endangered that you could see. Did any of them exhibit any outward discomfiture with the event?
No, didn't see anyone else.
No further questions.
Prosecution witness Michael Armstrong is a management employee of 1999 Broadway. He was driving toward the building on September 18th when he noticed something unusual.
I caught a glimpse of a figure on top of the building, and still at the red light waiting. I didn't see a jump or anything made as such. The light turned green. I made a left-hand turn, glanced up again, and about halfway through the building, I saw an individual with a parachute type thing floating down on towards the plaza area.
Did you notice any people on the ground roping off traffic or roping off pedestrians or making sure nobody jumped under there, or walked under the jump side or anything?
No.
Now, in your job with 1999 Broadway, if this had been going on, do you think you would have known about it?
Oh, yes, I would have.
Okay. Were you aware of anybody giving the defendant permission to jump off the building?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. No further questions, Judge.
Defendant Robin Hyde cross-examines.
When you saw the parachute in the air, did you have any trouble driving your car?
No, when I saw the parachute, I was still at the light. I got a honk actually from behind me to move forward because it had changed to green. Then I proceeded forward, and then when I had made my turn and was approaching the curb, when I knew I had control of the car, I glanced up again.
So there was no distraction from the parachute such that you could not pay attention to your duties as a driver and as a citizen. There was no more distraction from the event than, say, you saw a girl walking down the street that appealed to you.
Correct.
Okay. And what impressions did you have of the parachute in the air?
I was just taken by surprise, I guess. It was something I think of that magnitude, someone jumping off a 43-story building, I would know about because I am part of the management team. And
So you were surprised less
Right.
as a citizen than as a manager at the
Right.
building.
Correct.
Okay. No further questions.
The prosecution calls Sergeant First Class Nicholas Trujillo, an Army Special Forces jumpmaster and an expert parachutist. He is asked about the possible danger of parachuting.
You can have equipment malfunction. You can have entanglements in the air. You can have injuries on landing. Mother Nature can put her hands into it, and provide you with higher gusts of wind before you get to the ground than what's necessary, or wind changes.
Well, let me ask you this. In your training as a paratrooper, have you received any special knowledge in how winds react around tall structures and things like that?
Whenever you put up high rises in congested areas of different heights, it does channel airflow down through the streets as if there were canyons in the mountains, and it also disturbs the airflow, redirects it around the buildings. They do, in effect, alter the wind patterns.
Now, can these wind patterns change abruptly?
Yes, they can, just as anywhere.
Are you familiar with a building called 1999 Broadway?
Yes, I am.
In your opinion as an expert and in your experience, would you consider jumping off a building of that height at that location dangerous and risky?
Yes, I would.
No further questions, Judge.
In cross-examination, Defendant Robin Hyde questioned Sergeant Trujillo's expertise and knowledge of the defendant's own particular type of parachuting.
The more training you have, the more capable you are. Is that generally true?
The more training you have, the more competent you become.
You've talked about the malfunctions that are common to round parachutes. What malfunctions are common or inherent to airfoil parachutes?
I do not know.
What malfunctions are common or inherent to square parachutes with the slider down?
I don't know.
No further questions.
The prosecution has rested its case. We'll see the defense case, including testimony by the defendant himself, when On Trial returns. We return to the trial of Robin Hyde, accused of reckless endangerment in a publicity jump from a 43-story Denver office building. The defendant begins his own defense by calling the editor-in-chief of Gung Ho magazine, James Schultz.
Remember, what you are watching is real. Mr. Schultz was part of Robin Hyde's support team at the 1999 Broadway building.
Please be seated.
Isn't it true that I gave you a task?
Yes.
What was that task?
You gave me a two-way radio and told me to monitor ground activity. I was to be the ground safety officer. In addition, just prior to going off the building, there was another individual up there with you who would be letting me know on a countdown when you would be exiting the building. And you did your thing.
What were some of your other duties beyond simply doing the radio communication with the people on the roof?
Well, I was, again, told to stay near the TV people and let them know when things were going to get close, and which is what I did. I also did a loud enough countdown, though, so that everybody out there was aware that you were going at that time.
What would you estimate the wind speed to be?
I put up a little tiny U.S. flag, planted it in one of the planters at that area, and I would say the wind speed was under a couple of miles an hour at most.
No further questions, Your Honor.
I was asked.
Prosecutor Henry Cooper cross-examines.
Okay, were you right at the spot where he landed?
No, during his descent, he observed certain wind characteristics that to him meant that would be a better place to land.
Okay. No further questions, Judge.
Defense witness Jeff Wagner is an expert sport parachutist with over 1,700 jumps to his credit. He was also a part of the defendant's team on the day of the jump.
What did you do while we were upstairs?
Cleared the crowd, but in fact, most of the crowd were skydivers, so they knew.
How many
what
of them
was
did you
going on
recognize?
there. Majority.
Why didn't you put up some sort of barricades or ropes or...
It was my opinion that you left that job to me, and that would have caused more of a congestion problem than it would clearing the crowd out.
Why?
Well, for one thing, a barricade is going to draw attention and congest a crowd of people.
So given all your experience, your professional training, how would you describe the event? Was it?
I don't see.
Was it a controlled event? Let me ask you a question.
Absolutely, it was a controlled event. In my opinion, I don't see how it could have been handled more professional.
Thank you. No further questions.
Henry Cooper cross-examines for the prosecution.
Now, are you familiar with how winds react?
You bet.
in cavernous areas and around tall buildings.
Sure, and it takes in excess of a 15-mile-an-hour wind, in excess of a gusty 15-mile-an-hour wind to have an effect on that ram air canopy.
Are you aware of how they can change directions
You bet.
quickly around tall buildings? Okay.
And a low wind, which was the conditions of that day, they could have switched 180 and still not affected the performance of that parachute.
In your opinion?
Exactly.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay, and you indicate, I think, that as long as you've known him, you've never known him to do any type of jumps wrong or anything?
I've never seen him do anything reckless, no.
So you weren't there the time he jumped off a building and broke his leg? Okay.
That wasn't reckless to anyone else either.
Okay.
So,
no further questions, Judge.
Shelby, the
Defendant Robin Hyde takes the stand in his own defense. Remember, there won't be an attorney asking questions.
We did not inform the management of the possibility that we were going to jump for a couple of reasons. Number one, there was about a 60% chance that we'd never jump at all. I have canceled 60%, I would estimate, of all the base jumps I've ever planned to make.
Base jumping is the sport of parachuting off a stationary object.
In Denver. You know, there's a perception of base jumping as a real macho activity done by real swashbuckler-type people. Well, the swashbucklers of base jumping die fairly quickly, or they give it up because they scare themselves. Base jumping is an activity that requires much sensitivity to nuance and detail, because when you're operating in that arena, you need to pay a lot of attention to detail and to nuance. And there was a bunch of jumps that have been canceled simply because it didn't feel right. So we would cancel. That was one of the primary reasons we didn't talk to the building people, because there was a more than 50-50 chance it would never come off, and there was no sense in discussing it. I have visited the site at least a dozen times in the last couple of years. I have visited it 4 or 5 times in the 2 weeks preceding the jump to check everything, to check the site from different locations, to locate any obstacles, to assess the traffic flow, the pedestrian flow, the wind conditions. Each time I visited, I checked it at a different time of day, in a different frame of mind, from different perspective, so that I had a total picture of the environment in which I was going to be operating. Finally, the probability that everything would go perfect is 100%, because it did.
Prosecutor Henry Cooper cross-examines. His questioning concerns the defendant's philosophy as expressed in his fictional book, Sport Death.
Your book's called Sport Death, right? And you said it basically has to do with saying no to government.
When government gets out of line or screws up.
Okay. But isn't it really that you wanted to say no to government?
No, there was nothing to say no to.
Isn't it true that you have a history of saying no to government? And that's the reason you jump off buildings.
No, that's not true.
Isn't it true one time in Yosemite National Park that you were stopped by park rangers? They said, don't jump, and you looked at them and you laughed and you jumped off the cliff anyway.
No, that's not true. What I did is I
Well, let me ask you this. Do you remember a Wall Street article, Wall Street Journal article
yes,
that you were quoting?
I'll stipulate that I know it's in the Wall Street Journal
What did it say? What was your quote in that article?
I turned to them and I said, gentlemen, you have a nice day. And I turned around and jumped off.
But you knew that you weren't supposed to, didn't you?
No, I did not.
But you knew they wanted to stop you and they were park rangers, didn't you?
Yes.
You did it anyway, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions, Judge.
Both sides have rested. Let's listen to a portion of the closing arguments.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's clear in this case that people were put at risk. The defendant knew of those risks, and unjustifiably so, he ignored them. His only justification is that he wanted to save money on the promotion of his book. That's not justified. For that reason, I ask you to find him guilty of reckless endangerment.
Did I jump off the building with professional precision, or did I do a half-assed job? That's the issue here. If I did it like a pro, then I'm not guilty of reckless endangerment, and none of the prosecution's straw men can change that. Thank you. It's been an honor to come before you.
The jury is retired to consider its decision in the case of Robin Hyde. We'll hear the verdict when On Trial returns. We return to the trial of sport parachutist Robin Hyde, accused of reckless endangerment in his 530-foot jump from a Denver high-rise.
Robin Hyde's legal battle has gone on for 10 months. If convicted, he could be sentenced to 6 months in jail and a $750 fine.
And if the defendant will please rise, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty as charged in the complaint filed herein, 18-3-208, reckless endangerment. Ladies and gentlemen, is this your verdict? So say each of you.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hyde. You may be seated. I think the community has spoken. The penalty will be 30 days in jail and a $200 fine. I'll suspend the 30 days in jail, conditioned upon no future violation of this nature.
Judge Campbell has imposed a minimal sentence.
Mr. Hyde?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Court will be in recess.
Please rise.
Robin Hyde says he will appeal.